Greetings, adventurers. Can one character really ruin the dynamic of a group overnight? In this story, we're going to see that a problem player, paired with a DM that was playing favorites and couldn't wait to get him to the table, can take a perfectly knit group and quickly derail it over time. Welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. Today's treasure is called You Don't Scare Me, I Will Kill You Without Hesitation, aka the absolute worst player I've ever had the misfortune of playing with. So, this is my very first D&D game. It started out well enough. The party consisted of me playing a human druid who was the beholder of the brain cell, my best friend playing a Kenku bardlock whose patron was Asmodeus, but hell was an office building, our mutual friend playing half-orc barbarian armed with a plunger war axe and 0 brain cells, a human action grandma warlock, and an albino Kenku warlock who was basically an angsty teen with wings. Our DM wasn't the best dungeon master or person, which is why he let this happen, but his garbo behavior is for another post. We were fine for a while, we went on adventures and had fun, not really having a direction to go except wherever the DM pointed us. All in all, the party was a cohesive unit with good dynamics. My druid basically adopted the bardlock and barbarian, the action grandma was, well, like a cool grandma to everyone. And while the albino Kenku tried to keep his distance, he was pretty much adopted as the younger sibling of the group. The found family was strong, we were having fun. Then enter a new player, a player who played a tiefling rogue. And this guy joined and started the chain of events that led to this campaign becoming completely undone and disbanded. First off, he was introduced when he randomly decided to jump into battle with us in the woods. No reason, no motive, no actual integration. He showed up, killed who we were fighting with ease, and just decided to come along. It wasn't even addressed, he just started following us and carrying the decapitated head everywhere. Yup, his introduction was showing up everyone. I'm pretty sure he was a higher level than us, and carrying around the decapitated head of someone he'd murdered. This started a pattern because for some reason the DM liked this guy a lot and played favorites. For example, he managed to steal 84 breadsticks from a joint somehow with one roll, and meanwhile the bardlock who loves to read can't find a book in all the land to the point of defying logic and railroading. Seriously, we were in a big kingdom and somehow there wasn't a single bookstore, library, or general store that had books. The rogue managed to find a pen to steal on a body that had nothing to offer, and the bardlock had one of the 2 books he ever found dissolve into dust in his hands. Basically what I'm saying is that the guy got away with and rewarded for doing horrible things or dragging the party down with them. In the short time he was around, he, 1, was incredibly creepy towards the barbarian who was mentally a child due to amnesia, like he refused to sleep anywhere that wasn't near them, constantly would pause to say he felt up their muscles, etc. His behavior ended up making the player of the barbarian hate their character because the big lovable goof was poison for them because they were constantly being fetishized by this guy. 2, constantly loudly stated that he was going to steal. Almost every single NPC we met hated us immediately because of his behavior and didn't listen to reason when I or the other players tried to ask him to stop because he was making it impossible to play. 3, constantly tried to hog the spotlight for himself. There was a point in time where he discovered he could do magic, who knows, and he immediately went to shove it in everyone else's faces and try to get the other players to ooh and ah at his new powers, despite everyone but the action grandma and the DM despising him by then. 4, put a massive wedge between the barbarian and everyone else in the party. He constantly dragged them into his stuff and pitted the barbarian against myself and the bardlock constantly, despite how beforehand we were a tightly knit group and had a really good dynamic. Like he straight up acted like an abusive controlling boyfriend trying to keep us away from them. Alright, let's take a quick pause from the story just to point out a couple things. So we already have a big list of problems. I think the biggest takeaway and the biggest red flag is the fact that everyone is having a great time. This new player is introduced. It's really the only variable that's changed over the course of this session. And suddenly there's a lot of problems creeping up. So obviously we know it has something to do with this player. It sounds like the DM though and him are kind of a tag team. And like I've said in previous videos, a problem player is only as good, or in this case only as bad, as the Dungeon Master allows. This I'm sure will amplify as it goes on. And actually, one last shout out, the first thing that was pointed out, the fact that he was creepy towards the barbarian, I think that should be a red flag enough to know that this is not going to be a good time. Let's continue with the story. And then there was the worst offenses, all of them involving myself or the bardlock as we were the only 2 players and player characters to call him out on his crap. He pried a lot. He constantly tried to force our backstories out of us because he didn't like secrets, and treated both of us like dirt because we had the human decency to try and tell him maybe don't do that. He sat down in game, and a conversation with the Barlock threatening him if he ever stepped out of line in his eyes, aka did anything wrong by him. Yup, the murder hobo tried to threaten his fellow player into doing what he wanted. And then came the biggest and most lasting thing he did. He threatened to kill my druid to her face. The story goes, he, the barbarian, and the Barlock were all arguing over the most recent stupid stunt he pulled, and as usual, I stepped in and tried to stop it. But this time, he got angrier and escalated. Thinking on what my character would do, I left the room because I was getting nowhere. See, my character is a druid who's not good at peopling because he spent the last decade alone in the woods. And she's a timid sort of person who's soft-spoken and is prone to getting stuck in her own head due to backstory trauma, but can and will speak up and be assertive when it comes to protecting other people. The Barlock followed, and we had an actual rather touching conversation that was highlighting this horribleness, and then it was crashed by the rogue. My character was in the middle of explaining how they get their new weapons. I just multi-classed as Paladin and got a weapon out of it. When the rogue saw it, he immediately started interrogating her, and when she just put it away because she didn't want to talk to him, he just got all up in her face and straight up rolled to intimidate her. Got a high enough score, it worked, and ran away because nope. The Barlock eventually followed, and we got a rather sad and bittersweet scene between them. The player of the rogue asked me to have her leave and run into him in the hall, saying that we could talk through it and make amends. I said yes, sure, that sounds like a good idea. Oh, how wrong I was. When I came across him, he was punching a tree and screaming as ledgelords do, and when I went to talk to him, he immediately snapped at me and started being awful again. He threatened the Barlock, whom's again, she just had some very touching interactions with, to her face for no reason, and she finally stood up to him for real. His response was trying to be scary. This is exactly how the conversation went. Druid: kid, there's no way on this plane you could scare me. Rogue: kid, actually frightening laughter. Woman: I have been through so much. I have murdered close to 40 people, decapitated my ex-husband, slaughtered families. I have lived my life surviving everything nearly unscathed, and here you are calling me kid. I will literally kill you and not bat an eye, and I'm a kid? Am I a joke to you? Yup, you got that right. He asked me to find him to resolve the conflict, and when I got there, he spilled the most edgy, stupid backstory conceivable, which originally included a line about assault that I cut out because it was incredibly untasteful and was one of the things lined out as a no-no for this campaign. And then he threatened the life of my character to her face. I gave up on trying to stick up for her and calling him out because at this point I was just tired. But wait, there's more. Later on, he used this threat as leverage to make her skin a giant snake when she's made an oath to herself to never hunt or cut open animals. He made her break her defining character trait as a druid because I didn't want my character to be murdered. And even later on, around the turning point where nobody was having fun anymore, we fought a big monster that almost one-shot the barbarian, and the Barlock ran to escape because he was small and gonna die if he stayed around. I was gonna follow him because the DMPC came in and saved the day magically and made us all look like fools. The rogue's response to that? Tracking down the Barlock afterwards and chewing him out for that. Straight up slapping him for it, when we all know that if he had stayed, he'd be dead. The rogue turned the entire party, except for me, who was buried in the rubble of the place we fought and fighting to stay alive, against him, and basically publicly shamed both the Barlock and the player for it. When my character arrived, she was relieved that she was okay, and let him know that running was okay and she was going to do it too. Then the rogue got pissy again and let it slip that he had slapped the Barlock. That was the last straw. She lost it, she finally called him out on all his BS, and when the barbarian was confused and asked why they were fighting, she looked him straight in the eyes before she could say anything. The rogue piped up and bragged about threatening to kill her. He was smiling and everything. Let me say that again. He threatened to kill the main healer of the party and bragged about it. Yeah, F this guy. And that concludes the story. From start to finish, this way this guy was introduced. He's holier than thou, he gets special powers. I mean, maybe he eventually gets a rogue, like prestige class or archetype where he gets to have some magic casting. It's not very clear what edition this is, but it sounds like the DM just giving him freebies. He's also giving him a pass on quite a lot of bad behaviors. I'm very sorry that this party had to put up with it. I think the threatening, I mean, it's not cool, it's not okay. PvP is always a problem, but this DM was going to let the rogue do whatever he wants. So I'm not even surprised that it started with him rolling to intimidate. I always feel like social checks, stuff like persuasion, deception, intimidation, all that is considered PvP, and players really shouldn't be able to do it against each other because it removes their agency. So when it escalated from that to saying, oh yeah, my character will straight up fight you, yeah, of course the DM's going to let him do it because he's been letting this guy get away with everything all the time. Overall, I think it's really shitty that this campaign went from nice, you had your edgelord already, you had the Kenku. He doesn't really come up in the story again, but it sounds like he was the brooding, reclusive lone wolf that eventually gets adopted, and then, he warms up, but he's still going to be angsty here and there, and it's kind of played for laughs. The other characters sound really cool too. The barbarian was a great member of the party. Then for whatever reason, the problem player comes in, decides this barbarian's gonna be my partner in crime. A lot of stuff is left out, but the question that I would have for this original poster is, what happens next? Do you take the players you like and move on to a new campaign? Do you communicate with the problem player first and kind of make it a public thing so that if he freaks out, and he'll probably freak out, does everyone else realize that, hey, yeah, no, we all are kind of feeling the same thing? And if the DM sticks up for the problem player, again, you can always move on. I hate that a lot of the time the advice is just, hey, talk to them, expect them to blow up. If they don't, perfect, you get to play good D&D again. If they don't, it validated what you and maybe the rest of the party thought, and those who aren't okay with it can leave, start their own groups, and those who are okay with it can enjoy their little bubble. But I feel like that's the advice here. Thank you again for stopping by my marketplace. Our subscriber count is almost at 50k right now. I'm super happy about it. I can't believe that so many people have come together in a short time. And I can't wait to start making some community post content where I basically share everything that's piled up in the Discord, either glory stories or shorter RPG stories that don't quite fit in a long form video like this. I want to hear more from you guys, and thanks again for stopping by. Farewell for now.